The story of our national anthem. There was a lawyer once. His name was Francis Scott Key. He penned a song that I'm sure you're aware of. You've seen it. It's in most hymnals throughout our churches. It's called the National Anthem. It is our song as an American. We go, however, to a ball game and we stand in our church services and we sing the words to that song, and they float over our minds and our lips when we don't even realize what we're singing. Most of us have memorized it as a child, but we've never really thought about what it means. Let me tell you a story. Francis Scott Key was a lawyer in Baltimore. The colonies were engaged in vicious conflict with the mother country, Great Britain. Because of this conflict, they had accumulated prisoners on both sides. The American colonies had prisoners, and the British had prisoners. And the American government initiated a move. They went to the British and said, let us negotiate for the release of these prisoners. They said, we want to send a man out to discuss this with you. They were holding the American prisoners in boats about 1,000 yards offshore. And they said, we want to send a man by the name of Francis Scott Key. He'll come out and negotiate to see if we can make a mutual exchange. Well, on the appointed day, in a rowboat, he went out to where the British officials were on their boat, where the prisoners were being held. And they reached a conclusion that men could be exchanged on a one-for-one basis. Well, Francis Scott Key was jubilant with the fact that he had been successful, and he went down below in the boats, and what he found was a cargo hold full of humanity, the prisoners. And he said to them, men, I've got good news for you tonight. You're free. He said, tonight I have negotiated your return back to the colonies. He said, you'll be taken out of this boat, out of this filth, and out of your chains. Well, as he went back up on board to arrange for their passage to the shore, the British admiral came and said, we have a slight problem. He said, we will still honor our commitment to release these prisoners, but it'll be purely academic, for after tonight it won't matter. Francis Scott Key said, what do you mean? He said, well, Mr. Key, we have laid an ultimatum upon the colonies. Your people will either surrender and lay down the colors of that flag that you think so much of, or do you see that fort right over there? You mean Fort Henry? Yes, he said. We're going to remove it from off the face of the earth. Key said, how are you going to do that? The British admiral said, well, if you'll just look out on the horizon of the sea. And as Key looked, he could see hundreds of little dots. And the admiral said, that's the entire British war fleet. He said, all the gunpowder, all the armament has been called upon to demolish that fort. The fleet will be here within striking distance in a matter of about 2.5 hours. He said, the war is over. These men would be free anyway. Key said, you can't shell that fort, he said. That's a large fort, and it's full of women and children, and it's predominantly not a military fort. The British admiral said, well, don't worry about it. We've left them a way out. Key said, what's that? The admiral said, do you see that flag away up there? He said, well, we have told them that if they'll lower that flag, that the shelling will stop immediately. And we'll know that they've surrendered, and you will then be under British rule. Well, Francis Scott Key went down below and told the men what was about to happen. And they said, well, how many ships have they got? And he said, they've got hundreds of them. The ships got closer, and Francis Scott Key went back up on top, and he said, men, I'll shout down to you and tell you what's going on as we watch. Well, as twilight began to fall, and as the haze hung over the oceans as it does at sunset, suddenly the British war fleet unleashed. Bam! Key said that the sounds were deafening. He said there were so many guns, no let up on the firing. He said it is absolutely impossible to talk or hear. He said suddenly the sky, that although dark, was just suddenly lit up full of light. And he said from down below, all he could hear, the men, the prisoners saying was, "Tell us where the flag is. What have they done with the flag? Is the flag still flying? Tell us." 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours into the shelling, every time the bomb would explode and it'd come be close to the flag, they could see the flag in the illuminated red glare of that bomb. And Francis Scott Key would report down to the men below, said, "It's still up, it's not down." Well, the British admiral came and he said, "Your people are insane." He said, "What's the matter with them?" He said, "Don't they know this is an impossible situation?" Francis Scott Key said he remembered what George Washington had said. The thing that sets the American Christian apart from all of the people in the world is that he'll die on his feet before he'll live on his knees. Well, the British admiral told Francis, "We have now instructed all of the guns to focus on that place where the flag is and to take that flag down." He also said, "There's something that we don't understand. Our reconnaissance tells us that the flag has been hit directly again and again and again, and yet it's still flying. We just don't understand that." But he said, "Now we're about to bring every gun, and for the next 3 hours, we're going to bear down on that point." Well, Francis Scott Key said that the barrage was just unmerciful. All that he could hear was the men down below praying. They was praying the prayer, "Oh God, keep that flag flying where we last saw it." Sunrise came, and Key said there was a heavy mist hanging over the land. But there stood the flag. It was completely in shreds, and the flagpole itself was at a crazy angle, but the flag was still at the top. Francis Scott Key went up aboard and immediately went into Fort Henry to see what had happened. And what he had found had happened was that flagpole and that flag had suffered repetitious direct hits. And when it had fallen, that men, the fathers who knew what it meant for that flag to be on the ground. And although knowing that all of the British guns were trained on that flag, they walked over and held it up until they died. And other men would come over there and remove their bodies and take their place, holding that flagpole up. Francis Scott Key said that what held that flagpole in place at that unusual angle was the patriot bodies of those that love our country. And he penned the song, "Oh say, can you see, by the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, for the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that the flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star spangled banner yet fly and wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave?"